Welcome. The next lesson on our Proxmox lab series is configuring the firewall. So what we want to do is to allow communications between certain network segments, but disallow communications between certain. So for example, we want our AttackLAN needs to be able to communicate with the ECorp LAN so that the attacks can take place. That's the whole purpose of setting up the lab. However, we want to prevent the AttackLAN from accessing systems on the AllSafe LAN, which is where Elastic and Velociraptor will be set up. But we do want communications between AllSafe and ECorp. So we'll be able to configure that using firewall rules on pfSense. To configure the firewall, the first thing we need to do is open a browser on one of our virtual machines. So I'm opening it on one of the Windows machines. So to access the firewall rules, I will use the pfSense adapter that is connected to this LAN segment, which is 10.0.1.1. And I can run that and then be presented with the login page. Now, the first time you do it, you'll probably be presented with the fact that it is a self-signed certificate, so you'll have to accept the risk to get to the page. The default login, when the first time you log in, is admin, and the password is pfSense, all lowercase. Asking to save the password. Not interested in that. So we can change the password in the user manager. And we're welcome to we're introduced to this welcome screen. We can just select next. It just tells us about the support, so we can select next. So the host name right now is pfSense. So we're just going to keep that. The domain, we'll go ahead and go with ECorp.local. And we're not going to make any changes in DNS. And we will select next. Now we're asked to do the time zone. I'm going with Eastern time zone. And we'll select next. Here we want to scroll down to the bottom. And we want to unblock. It says block private networks from entering by way of the WAN. We're going to uncheck that. And then we will select next. This is the LAN IP address for this segment. We're good with that, so we can select next. And now it's asking us to change our admin password. I'll do that. And select next. So we will go ahead and select reload at this point. Once that is complete, I'm going to go ahead and select Finish. I will accept the terms. Close that. This brings us to the dashboard with basically the admin information that we have about the firewall, including, you see, the interfaces that we set up from the command line. Now we want to go to the interfaces and select the LAN is at 10.1.1, so I'll select the LAN first. We can call this whatever we want. I'm calling it ECorp. Not making any other changes, so I'll select Save. We'll apply those changes. Then we'll come right back with 1. This will be AllSafe. This is where our Elastic server and Velociraptor server will reside. Select Save. We will apply those changes. And lastly, we will go ahead and select the last, and this will be our AttackLAN. We'll keep everything else and we'll select Save. Once again, we need to apply those changes. Now we want to go to Services and select DNS Resolver. Then we want to scroll down to the bottom and we want to check DHCP registration and static DHCP. Scroll back up, look at advanced settings. We want to make sure that prefetch support is selected as well as prefetch DNS key support. Then we'll scroll down, select Save, and we will apply those changes. Now we want to go to System, select Advanced. We'll go to Networking. We want to scroll down till we see Hardware Checksum. We want to enable that. Scroll the rest of the way down and select Save. It's going to ask us for a reboot. Go ahead and do that. Now pause the video while it reboots. Okay, so once it's restarted, once again, we'll log in with admin, but now we have to use the new password that we set up. And we're logged in. All right, so what we want to do now is set up some static IP addresses. So go to status, then drop down to DHCP leases. The reason we want to set up static IP addresses, especially on our Windows systems, is we want to ensure that our Windows clients can communicate with the domain controller. We've already set up a static IP address on our Linux server. So now we just need to select the plus sign. So we'll just type in the IP address manually is 10.0.1.5, and you can refer back to the network diagram if you have any questions on what IP addresses they should have. And then once you've done that, you can just scroll down to the bottom and select Save. Then select Apply Changes. And now we need to do this process again for our other virtual machines. So go from Status to DHCP Leases, and we'll do the Windows Workstation, select the plus sign, and then we'll manually type in the IP address of 10.0.1.2, and scroll down and hit Save. Apply the changes. Go back to Status and then DHCP Leases, and we'll do the other Windows Workstation. Select the plus sign. Type in the IP address of 10.0.1.4. Scroll down to the bottom and select the Save button. Apply those changes. And those are the static IP addresses that we wanted to set. Once again, that was just the Windows systems. So now what we want to do is select Firewall and go to Rules. And what we can do now is set the firewall rules for each of the adapters. And we'll start with the ECorp network. Is we actually want to create an alias. So we'll select from the firewall down to aliases, and we will select add. And we're going to name this alias RFC 1918. The description will be private IPv4 address space. Networks. And the first one, basically we're going to those private non-routable IP addresses. We're making an alias for all those. So the first one is a 10.0.0.0. That is a /8. And we want to add another network. We're going to add them all. So 172.16.0.0. That is a /12. We'll add another network. This will be the 192.168.0.0. It's a /16. Wasn't quite finished. So we'll add another network. The 169.254.0.0, another /16. And then lastly, the 127.0.0.0, and that's a /8. Once that is complete, we can hit Save and Apply Changes. Now we'll use that alias when we create one of the rules. We'll start creating rules now. So we are. So we'll start by setting the firewall rules for the ECorp subnet. Now I already have the rules, but the way you would do this is you would select the add with the arrow pointing down. And this is important because the way firewall rules work is the rule that is listed first or on top has precedence over any of the rules below. For instance, if you had block all traffic going to the AllSafe network as the first rule, and then the bottom rule is allow traffic anywhere, you would still not be able to get to the AllSafe network because it was blocked before it allowed all traffic anywhere. So speak of the all traffic anywhere, that's the rule we'll set up. This anti-lockout rule is automatically applied. So the first rule that you'll do is you'll select the down arrow, and for the firewall rule, this particular rule will allow traffic anywhere, which means the ECorp subnet will be able to communicate with the AllSafe network as well as the AttackLAN, which it needs to conduct the attacks, as well as allow traffic out to the internet. So for the settings for this particular firewall rule, for action, you will select pass. There is a drop down. And for the interface, of course, this will be the ECorp interface. The address family will be IPv4 and IPv6. And once again, these are all drop downs. For protocol, we will select any. For the source is the ECorp subnets. And once again, all the subnets are listed. And the destination is any. So once again, this rule will allow traffic to anywhere. And we'll type in the description of allow traffic anywhere. And once that is done, we will select save. And this is the only rule we're going to apply to the ECorp subnet. These are pretty simplified firewall rules. I encourage you to go ahead and you can experiment by blocking different subnets and try to ping to try to get to them. But for our lab purposes, we want the ECorp subnet to be able to communicate with all the other subnets as well as the internet. So we can go ahead and select apply changes. Typically, you don't have to select apply changes so you have all the rules for that particular subnet. But since we really only are adding one rule for the ECorp subnet, then it's pretty simple. Next, we'll go to the AllSafe subnet. So the AllSafe subnet, this is where our like Elastic server and Velociraptor server, all those defensive resources will be, because basically our scenario sort of is AllSafe is a managed service provider or managed security service provider, MSSP. So they have access into the ECorp network, and all their monitoring devices are in the AllSafe network. But the traffic and the forwarders and everything are coming from the ECorp network. So for the AllSafe network, we're going to apply two rules. The first one is going to be to block anything from the AttackLAN. And that's basically because that's sort of AllSafe is where there's no reason for the AttackLAN to have access into it. We don't want the AttackLAN to have access into it, so we can block there. So that would be the first rule. So you would select either, if it's the first rule, you can either hit the add down or the add up, and then we'll go over the settings. Is the action is block. So once again, there's a drop down. You would select block. The interface is AllSafe. The address family, go ahead and select IPv4 and IPv6. And the protocol is any. The source is the AttackLAN subnets. So anything coming from the AttackLAN subnets will be and going to the destination AllSafe subnets will be blocked. So basically, and that's the description that we would include. In the description block is block traffic from the AttackLAN to AllSafe. Then you would select save. And then you would apply the second rule. And on this one, you want to make sure that this rule is below the block rule, because as I mentioned before, the rule on the top has precedence. So if this is blocking any traffic from the AttackLAN, even though the next rule says allow any traffic it's not going to allow that coming from the AttackLAN because it was blocked first before it ever gets to the second rule. So the settings for that allow anywhere rule are very similar to the rule that we set up for the ECorp network. So the action is to pass. The interface that we're using, of course, is AllSafe. We want both IPv4 and IPv6 IP addresses. In the protocol, we want all protocols or any protocols. The source is the AllSafe subnet, and the destination is any. So you have options on the drop-down for all the different subnets as well as any. And the description will just call this allow anywhere. So basically it's allowing all incoming and outgoing traffic from anywhere. But remember, we have that block rule first, so the AttackLAN will not be able to access the AllSafe subnet. So now we've written both of those rules. We can go ahead and select apply change at this point. And now if we go over to the AttackLAN, there's two rules we're going to apply there. Once again, there's going to be one block and one pass. And the first rule to block, and if you apply this rule first, it doesn't matter if you hit the add up arrow or the add below arrow, it's going to be the first rule that you're creating. And then the second rule you'll create, you'll put the add below arrow. So the settings for the first rule, once again, it is going to be block. And the interface we're using is the AttackLAN interface, of course. And then the address family, we're using IPv4 and IPv6. Any protocol. And for the source is the AttackLAN subnets. And the destination is the AllSafe subnets. So the description is block traffic to AllSafe. So similar to the rule that we set up in AllSafe to block traffic incoming from the AttackLAN, this rule is blocking outgoing traffic from the AttackLAN to the AllSafe subnet. And then we can select save. And we don't need to select apply changes yet because we're going to go ahead and add the second rule, which is the traffic to anywhere rule. Once again, it needs to be below that block that we just did. And those settings are very similar to what we had just set up for both the ECorp network and the AllSafe network. Is we're going to pass. In the interface we're setting up, of course, is the AttackLAN, both IPv4 and IPv6, protocol any, the source, AttackLAN subnets, and the destination is any. And then once again, in the description, we're calling this allow traffic to anywhere. And we'll select save. And at this point, we can go ahead and apply changes. Those are the only two rules that we're setting up for the AttackLAN. And really, then the last rule that we need to look at is the WAN. And the first rule, that block rule you see, that is by default. So the only other rule we're really setting up for this is an allow any rule. So once again, it's pass is the action. The interface is the WAN, and of course IPv4 and IPv6 and any protocol. And then for the source and destination, just select any on both of those. The description will be allow everything. And then we save it. And then we apply our changes. So once we've done that, this is all the rules we're setting up at this point. So this allows communication between these different subnets. The only block is really between the AttackLAN and the AllSafe LAN. So what we can do at that point is we can hit the diagnostics drop down and go down to reboot and select reboot. We'll pause until the system reboots. All right, so it's asking us to log back in again, admin, and then the password that we created earlier in this video. We're back. So once again, we see our interfaces. What we can do is test these settings by going first to Kali Linux. So the Kali Linux, this is the from the AttackLAN. So we should be able to ping devices on the ECorp LAN. So like the domain controller was .5. If I run this, yes, so we can communicate there. Now we did have a rule to stop the AttackLAN from being able to touch the AllSafe LAN. So we can ping 10.0.2.4, which was our Kali Purple. We see we do not have communications there. That is allowing traffic to the ECorp net, but not to the AllSafe net. And then if we change machines to a machine on the, so this is one of the Windows machines on the ECorp net. If we try to ping the 10.0.2.4, which is that Kali Purple box in the AllSafe net, we can see we can communicate with it. And then if we go to the AttackLAN, and we can communicate to that AttackLAN as well. So that pretty much sets up our networking. We're able to set up different network segments. We want some to talk to others, such as the AttackLAN to the ECorp LAN, and the ECorp LAN to the AllSafe LAN, but stop communications like between the AttackLAN and the AllSafe LAN. So that completes what we wanted to cover in this video.